There's a jar on a shelf in my wife's kitchen. She uses it to kill cockroaches. She uses it to preserve flour. She lines the walls behind the cabinets with it. She dusts the chickens with it. She has never bought a can of Raid. She has never bought a box of mothballs. She has never bought a bag of fiberglass insulation. That jar cost her $8. It lasts her a year. And if you asked her what is inside it, she would hold it up to the light and say one word: fossils. I have been using this powder my entire life. My father used it. His father used it. And his father before him, all the way back to when our families first came to Holmes County from Switzerland and Germany over 200 years ago. We never thought of it as a secret. We thought of it as common sense. But then I started hearing what people outside our community pay for the things this jar does for free. $500 a year on pest control. $150 a month running a dehumidifier. $12,000 for insulation in an attic. And I realized something. It is not that you chose not to use this. It is that nobody ever told you it existed. So I am going to tell you everything. What it is, what it does, how to use it, and why a $28 billion pest control industry and a $60 billion insulation industry hope you stop watching this video right now. Here is the number that matters. This powder has a thermal conductivity of 0.05 to 0.10 watts per meter Kelvin. The pink fiberglass insulation in your attic, the kind made by Owens Corning, has a thermal conductivity of about 0.04. Engineers at the Russian Academy of Sciences published a study documenting this exact range. The numbers are nearly identical. But fiberglass does one thing. It slows heat transfer. That is all it does. This powder insulates. It kills insects on contact. It absorbs moisture from the air. It resists fire at temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius. It preserves stored grain for years without refrigeration, and it is classified by your own FDA as generally recognized as safe. One material, 6 functions. You cannot patent it. You cannot build a subscription around it. A 10-pound bag costs $8 at your hardware store. That is the problem. Not for you. For the people selling you 5 separate products to do what this one bag does by itself. Let me tell you what you are actually holding when you hold this powder. Because once you understand it, the rest of what I am about to say will make you angry. This powder is not earth at all. It is the fossilized remains of creatures called diatoms, single-celled algae that lived in freshwater lakes and oceans 20 to 30 million years ago. When they died, their tiny shells, made almost entirely of silica, the same compound as glass, sank to the bottom and piled up, layer after layer. Over millions of years, those layers compressed into a soft rock called diatomite. When you mine it and grind it, you get what we call fossil dust. Your stores call it diatomaceous earth. Under a microscope, each particle looks like a tiny cylinder covered in holes. Millions of microscopic pores arranged in a structure so precise that no engineer has ever been able to replicate it. Those pores are what give this powder every single one of its properties. The pores trap air. That makes it an insulator. The pores absorb moisture. That makes it a dehumidifier. The edges of those fossilized shells are sharp at the microscopic level, sharp enough to cut through the waxy coating on an insect's exoskeleton. Once that coating is breached, the insect loses moisture and dies within hours. No chemical reaction, no poison, no toxin, just physics. The same physics that has been sitting in lake beds for 20 million years. Think about what you have in your cabinet right now. A can of Raid. It uses a chemical called pyrethroid to attack an insect's nervous system. That chemical breaks down. It loses effectiveness. You reapply it every few weeks. It leaves residue on surfaces where your children and your pets eat and sleep. This powder never breaks down. It never loses effectiveness. It works as long as it stays dry. A line of this behind your kitchen cabinets will kill every cockroach, ant, and silverfish that crosses it for years. Not weeks, years. And when your dog walks through it, nothing happens. When your child touches it, nothing happens. It is not a poison. It is a fossil. Now, we did not discover this. I want to be clear about that. We inherited it. The same way we inherit everything. Quietly. Practically. Without asking anyone's permission. The Egyptians knew the principle 3,000 years ago. They stored grain in clay vessels lined with mineral dusts that kept insects from destroying their food. Archaeologists documented grain storage practices using mineral dust barriers in granaries along the Nile. The Chinese used similar mineral powders in their granaries during the Han Dynasty, roughly 200 BC. The Romans mixed mineral earth into their grain stores for the same reason. Every major agricultural civilization arrived at the same answer independently. Fine mineral dust kills insects mechanically. No chemistry required. When our families settled Holmes County, Ohio, and Lancaster County, Pennsylvania in the 1700s and 1800s, they brought centuries of European farming tradition with them. Dusting grain bins, dusting chicken coops, lining root cellars with fine powder to keep vermin away from stored food. We did not call it diatomaceous earth. We did not need a brand name. My grandmother called it shell powder. Some families call it fossil dust. We used it the way our grandparents used it, and their grandparents before them. Let me show you what my wife does with it. She has mason jars in the pantry filled with flour, oats, dried beans, and cornmeal. Every jar has a thin layer of this powder mixed into the top inch. Flour stored this way lasts 5 years without a single weevil. No vacuum sealing, no freezing, no chemical preservative. She buys one 10-pound bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth a year for $8. That one bag covers the entire pantry, the chicken coop, the garden beds, and the baseboards of the kitchen. She spends $8 a year on pest control. I have been told the average American household spends $500. I did not understand that number the first time I heard it. I thought it was a mistake. Then someone explained to me what your pest control system looks like. A man comes to your house every month or every quarter. He sprays chemicals along your baseboards and around your doors. The chemicals wear off. The insects come back. The man comes back. You pay him again. You have been doing this your entire adult life. 85% of the money your pest control industry makes comes from what they call recurring service contracts, monthly payments, quarterly treatments, annual renewals. They built a $28 billion industry on the fact that their product stops working. Mine does not stop working. That is why they do not mention it. And here is where your history turns. Because what happened in 1938 did not just change how America builds houses. It changed what America was allowed to know about the materials that came before. On October 31st, 1938, two glass companies incorporated a new business called Owens Corning Fiberglass Corporation in Toledo, Ohio. Their mission was to sell a material that a researcher named Dale Kleist had stumbled on 6 years earlier, when he accidentally hit a stream of molten glass with compressed air and produced fine glass fibers. That accident became an industry. That industry became a monopoly. By 1949, Owens Corning controlled half the insulation market in America. The Department of Justice filed an antitrust suit. A court forced them to license their patents, but by then, it did not matter. Fiberglass had become the only word anyone was allowed to say. Everything that came before it, the mud, the straw, the wool, the mineral powders, the fossil dust that had insulated walls and storage buildings for centuries, all of it was reclassified. Not banned, not tested and found wanting, just reclassified. Diatomaceous earth became a pool filter, a food additive, an industrial absorbent. The idea that it belonged in a wall, behind a cabinet, under a floorboard, in a grain bin, that idea simply disappeared from the American conversation. It did not disappear from ours. We kept using it the way we had always used it. We did not switch because nobody told us to, and even if they had, we would not have listened. Let me give you the numbers, because numbers are what separate what I am telling you from a story. Your insulation market generates over $60 billion a year. Owens Corning alone posted $11 billion in sales in 2024. They are a Fortune 500 company. Your pest control industry generates $28.5 billion a year. Over 13 million American households pay for recurring pest control services. Your mold remediation industry costs American homeowners $15 billion a year. That is over $100 billion combined, flowing through 3 industries every single year. Now, think about what one $8 bag of this powder does to those numbers. It replaces the exterminator. One application behind the baseboards lasts years. One dusting in the attic serves as both pest barrier and insulation supplement. 1 tablespoon per quart of stored grain eliminates chemical preservatives. Every bag sold is a service contract that never gets signed, a can of spray that never gets bought, a roll of fiberglass that never gets installed. You cannot build a $28 billion industry on a product that costs $8 and never needs to be replaced. You can only build that industry by making sure nobody knows the $8 product exists. Not banned, not disproven, just shelved. The pest control industry did not need to conspire. They just needed to spend money. The National Pest Management Association, the industry's trade group, spent years positioning chemical pest control as the only professional standard. Call a professional, schedule regular treatments. The language always implies that pest control requires expertise, specialized chemicals, and ongoing service. It never mentions that a bag of fossilized algae from the hardware store does the same job permanently with no chemicals and no monthly bill. And the insulation industry followed the same path. After the post-war housing boom made fiberglass the default, Your building codes were written around manufactured products. Try submitting a building plan that specifies diatomaceous earth as insulation. There is no R-value rating for it in the code books. There is no approved installation method. There is no box on the inspector's form. Not because it fails, because the form was written by people who sell fiberglass. We do not have inspectors. We do not have code books. We have walls that work, and they have worked for 200 years. Now, if you already own a house, and you are thinking this does not apply to you, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. You do not need to tear out your walls. You do not need a contractor. You do not need anyone's permission. Here is exactly what you do, and I am going to tell you the same way I would tell my neighbor across the fence. Go to any hardware store, feed store, or order it on your computer. Buy a 10-pound bag of food-grade diatomaceous earth, not pool-grade, food-grade. That distinction matters. Pool-grade is heat-treated and chemically altered. Food-grade is the pure, unprocessed powder, the same thing sitting in my wife's kitchen right now. A 10-pound bag costs between $8 and $14 for pest control. Take a powder duster or a simple squeeze bottle. Apply a thin line along every baseboard in your kitchen, bathroom, and basement. Dust behind the refrigerator, behind the stove, inside every cabinet where you have ever seen an ant or a cockroach. Dust the sill plates in your basement or crawl space. Dust around every pipe where insects come in from outside. Dust the window frames. If you have an attached garage, dust the threshold where the garage meets the house. One Saturday morning, $8 to $14. Every crawling insect that crosses that line dies within 24 to 48 hours. No spray, no poison, no service contract, no $500 annual bill. I have been doing this since I was old enough to reach the baseboards with a jar. For food storage. Mix 1 tablespoon of food-grade DE per gallon of dried goods, flour, oats, rice, beans, cornmeal. Shake the container. The powder coats the grain. Any weevil, grain moth, or beetle that hatches inside dies before it can reproduce. The powder is tasteless. It is odorless. You do not need to wash it off before cooking. Your FDA approved it as an anti-caking agent. You are already eating it in commercial flour and cereal. You just did not know it. For moisture control, place shallow dishes or open containers of DE in damp areas, basements, bathrooms, closets, under sinks. The powder pulls moisture from the air. It works like a dehumidifier with no electricity. When it gets saturated, spread it in the sun for a few hours to dry. Then use it again. We have a root cellar that stays dry year-round this way. No machine, no power, no monthly cost. For the chicken coop or any livestock area, dust the bedding, the nesting boxes, the roosting bars. DE controls mites, lice, and flies without chemicals. Our families have done this for as long as anyone can remember. Mix 2% into the feed as an anti-caking agent. 1 10-pound bag covers a backyard coop for an entire season. For the garden, dust the base of plants with aphid, beetle, slug, or ant problems. Apply when it is dry. Reapply after rain. It will not harm earthworms, and it will not contaminate your soil. 1 bag, 5 jobs. Pest control, food preservation, moisture management, livestock health, garden protection. Total cost for the year, $8 to $14. Total chemicals, 0. Now, before I tell you the part that I think matters most, the thing I have never heard anyone outside our community talk about, I want to mention something. Everything I have shared across this channel, the stove, the wall, the water, the cooling system, and now this, is in one place. It is called the Amish home system. The link is in the description. But stay here, because what I am about to tell you is how my grandfather built walls that breathe, and it is the reason our houses do not have mold. Here is what I found when I started asking the older men in our community why our farmhouse walls feel different from the walls in your houses. This powder is not just an insulator. It is a humidity regulator. Researchers published a study in 2025 looking at porous ceramics made from diatomaceous earth. They found that DE-based materials achieved a moisture absorption rate of 28% in high humidity environments. The material takes in water vapor when the air is wet and releases it when the air dries. Your engineers call this hygroscopic buffering. We just call it a wall that breathes. In the older farmhouses here in Holmes County, the interior plaster was mixed with mineral powders, what the old families called fossil powder. That plaster regulated humidity inside the house without any machine. In summer, the walls absorbed moisture from the thick Ohio air. In winter, when the wood stove dried everything out, the walls slowly released moisture back into the room. No humidifier, no dehumidifier, no electricity. The house stayed comfortable year-round because the walls themselves were doing the work. Your standard drywall does none of this. Gypsum board, the wall material in every American home built after 1950, does not absorb meaningful moisture. It does not release it. When moisture collects behind it, it grows mold. You spend $15 billion a year on mold remediation. $15 billion fixing a problem that our walls prevent in the first place. You can do this yourself without tearing down a single wall. Mix food-grade DE into lime plaster or lime wash at a ratio of about 10 to 15% by volume. Apply it to basement walls, bathroom walls, closet interiors, anywhere moisture gives you trouble. The lime binds. The DE provides the pores. The combination absorbs, holds, and releases moisture the way our farmhouse walls have done for 200 years. The cost for a basement treatment is under $30. A bucket of hydrated lime and a bag of DE. 2 Saturday mornings with a brush, and your basement stops smelling like a basement. That is the knowledge that existed before fiberglass, before drywall, before spray foam, before chemical pesticides, before monthly service contracts. Mineral dust, fossil powder. 20 million years of microscopic engineering sitting in a bag on a shelf at your feed store for $8. The Egyptians stored grain with it 3,000 years ago. The Chinese used mineral dust in the Han Dynasty. Our families carried the knowledge from Europe and never let go of it. And in 1938, when Owens Corning opened its doors in Toledo, Ohio, and fiberglass became the only answer America was given, the fossils went quiet. They did not disappear. They did not stop working. They just waited on a shelf while your country spent $28 billion a year on exterminators and $60 billion on insulation and $15 billion on mold remediation, All for problems that a 20-million-year-old fossil solves for $8. The jar is still on the shelf. It has always been on the shelf. And it will be on the shelf long after every can of Raid and every roll of pink fiberglass has ended up in a landfill. My wife did not read a study. She did not watch a video. She did not need a brand name or a subscription or a licensed technician. She needed a jar, a shelf, and the willingness to trust what her grandmother already knew. Now you know it too. I want to hear from you. Drop your state in the comments and tell me what you spend on pest control every year. And tell me if you have found diatomaceous earth at your local hardware store or feed store. I want to know where it is available and where it is not. And if your grandmother ever stored flour with a white powder mixed in and you never knew what it was, tell me that story. Because that is this powder. It has always been this powder. If you are the kind of person who believes that real practical knowledge has been quietly pushed aside to protect someone else's profit, you already know what to do next. Hit subscribe. Not for me, for what comes next. Because in the next video, I'm going to show you what we do with wood ash that eliminates the need for one of the most expensive products in your bathroom. And the internal company memo from 1993 that proves the manufacturer knew their product was unnecessary the entire time. You are not going to want to miss that one.